We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
First son gets a sweetheart deal, and it seems that China is playing big power games over in Cuba. All this and more on today's edition of Liberty Nation Radio right here on the Radio American Network. I'm your host, Mark Angelides. Remember, this show is proudly sponsored by LibertyNation.com, where you can access podcasts, breaking news, analysis, and a range of biting and brilliant shows to whet your appetite for freedom and your fondness for the great American Constitution, the number one place for free thinking and free speech. The legal equivalent of a slap on the wrist for the president's son, Hunter Biden, for failing to pay taxes and gun crimes. Now, did the system work as it's supposed to, or is this yet more evidence that it's not what you've done, but who you know? Well, helping us figure out the facts is Liberty Nation's legal affairs editor, host of the excellent Uprising podcast, and the greatest legal mind on this show right now, Mr. Scott D. Casenza, Esquire.
Thank you so much for that high praise, Mark. I appreciate it. It's a pleasure.
You're very, very welcome. I feel sorry for the other guy. So tell me, how good, if you could first, to our listeners, if they haven't encountered a TV, radio, or newspaper in the last couple of days, what is the deal, and just how good is it for Hunter Biden?
Oh, well, anytime that you can walk away from potential criminal liability without having incurred a custodial sentence or a felony conviction, boy, that's great. Because those are the things that really hurt, meaning, you know, the custodial sentence to the dignity and convenience and everything else. It's a real awful experience for anybody who has to undergo it. And a felony conviction makes a person oftentimes ineligible for all sorts of things in life, and lets them sort of be treated as not quite second-class citizens, but it's a bad look. And so to escape those two things is great, Mark.
Okay, and so let's talk about the crimes for which the deal that hasn't been finalized yet. We should point that out. There still has to be approved by a judge, but
this is a deal that was worked out by Mr. Weiss, who's the U.S. attorney for Delaware, and who works for Merrick Garland and Joe Biden, by the way, just in case somebody doesn't know. He made the deal.
Let's just reiterate that point for the cheap seats, Scott. The person who's come up with the deal works for
the father
Merrick
of
Garland,
the defendant,
and Joe Biden,
and Merrick Garland, and of course the president of the United States, the father of Hunter Biden, and the boss of Mr. Weiss said basically, you know, my son did nothing wrong. He said that multiple times, so that's an interesting backdrop. But in any case, this is what we learned. We didn't learn about this. Part of the problem, Mark, about the entire affair, if you will, is the way it has been handled. And what I mean by that is because he's the president's son, and it's a political decision on whether or not to charge a person at all, and a political decision for which charges to seek if one does make a decision to charge, meaning, do we charge Hunter Biden with a crime, and are they felonies or misdemeanors? You know, those are both political judgment calls made by political appointees. It's not like we apply facts to some rubric of, you know, metric, and like we come out at the other end with a impartial call.
If
it is
A
partial.
plus B equals C,
right.
Do X and Y.
It's the opposite. This is a partial call, and there were crickets from the DOJ and the administration on this. They didn't talk about it at all, and the U.S. attorney didn't come out with an announcement and a press conference where he could be asked questions by the members of the media. Instead, how we learned about it was the U.S. attorney sent a letter to the federal court and said, we'd like a day on the docket, basically, to come in and enter this plea. And then if the plea is entered, that's a judicial approval, basically, of the arrangement. And through leaks, we presume from the prosecutor's office to legacy media companies, namely the Washington's most prominent newspaper, published a report that they will seek no time. That's why we're saying that Hunter won't go away, not because the letter says he won't go, but because the leaks from, again, presumably the prosecutor's office, which is itself a real problem and a crime that they're leaking this information. But in any case, they're saying that the deal includes no time for Hunter.
Okay, so I think I'd like to get on the phone here today, Mr. Wesley Snipes. Unfortunately, I can't. I don't have Mr. Snipes number. But Mr. Snipes, if you are listening, do give us a call, because I believe Mr. Snipes, the famous actor, for those of you who don't know him, excellent in the Blade movies, among many others, got 3 years behind bars for similar tax arrangements, crimes, if you will.
Well, I don't know that they were similar. I know that he got some time. He had to serve federal prison sentence for failure to pay taxes, but I don't know if we can say, draw too many parallels. If you want, I will take leave of the program for 2 minutes and just take a look so I can comment more intelligently on Mr. Snipes.
No, you're all right. Okay. So what I think the point I'm trying to make here, other than trying to get Wesley Snipes to give me a call and give me like a Blade autograph, is that most people who knowingly don't pay their taxes get some punishment that is above and beyond what Mr. Hunter Biden.
Well, I don't think it's fair to say so. I think it's more. Let's talk about the essential question. Is this a deal that Hunter Biden gets that other people don't get because they're not Hunter Biden? That's sort of, I think,
what's the answer?
The big question. And the answer is maybe. There are a number of facts here to yet discover for those of us that are interested in the nitty-gritty, Mark. And what they will reveal is what pains Mr. Biden took to conceal his income and to not pay what was legally required to in taxes. And if a person, for instance, establishes shell corporations in multiple countries in order to conceal funds and deals.
I see what you did there, Scott. I see what you did there, referencing the numerous shell corporations,
non-dollar denominations, and all kinds of other measures. That is a different order entirely than somebody who simply needed to write a check and didn't write that check. Those are offenses of a different order. And so for those charges, I would say we need to discover more facts before we can truly discover, because it has been reported that that's what Mr. Biden did, engaged in that level of concealment in the fraud. But we don't know. It's all a black box. That might have been an important bit of information that a U.S. attorney, Mark, who's charging the son of the president of the United States exactly 1 week after his same Justice Department said that the former president of the United States should be incarcerated for the rest of his natural life, effectively, for mishandling some classified documents that cost the United States no penalty in, it's not like our intelligence posture has changed in any significant regard because of Donald Trump's mishandling of documents. Like, literally, there's no damage. Where's the victim? We don't have that. And at the same time, Hunter Biden seems like he gets off without so much as a buy your leave. So
let's briefly talk about the other crime to which he pleaded guilty, and that is being an admitted drug user.
It's for lying on a gun background check form,
which people go to prison for, right? Sometimes it's a sometimes and a maybe.
For it. Yeah, it's true. I can tell you this: the federal government has not been nearly as aggressive as they could be with enforcing this rule, and I want to be the first person to say, especially, I don't want them to be more aggressive. Sometimes it's a good thing when the federal government doesn't come after people. I would suggest for both of these crimes, maybe even liberty advocates might be interested in relaxed prosecution if it were applied across the board. Now, you can't have a situation, obviously, where Hunter gets a libertarian treatment from the prosecutor's office and the rest of us have to suffer through, micromanaging. But in any case, the federal firearms, I think it's a 4473. We were talking about this earlier in the week regarding another story, which is about the IRS seizing some forms from a gun dealer. But that's the form we're talking about. It includes, some basic biographical data about the application for purchase, the name, rank, and serial number, and then a number of questions, including, have you ever been adjudicated mentally incompetent? Are you now currently an unlawful user of or otherwise addicted to controlled substances, I think is how it defines what it says. And he said no, and he was. And then he wrote, I think in his biography or his autobiography, that he was at that time. So he states in print, that he. So in other words, if he didn't state it in print, they probably wouldn't even be charging him with it at all. And typically, other Americans, I don't think, would be charged with this crime. It's not a crime that we see a ton of prosecutions on. We don't see the federal government, for instance, Mark, going to California and saying, give us a list of all your medical marijuana card holders, and then juxtaposing that with a list of who has sought permission to buy a firearm, and then send agents out. I don't even want to say anymore. I want to give the administration ideas on how to frustrate gun ownership in the country, Mark. But even though Biden's administration has been hostile to gun rights, and more hostile than any administration since Barack Obama's, they're not doing their worst.
Yeah, they're not doing the worst that they could possibly be doing, and thank heavens for that, I guess.
Yeah.
Now, we'll be back with Scott DeCosenza after this short break, discussing whether Hunter Biden's legal troubles are truly over. Don't go anywhere. We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
Don't get caught up in the media madness. Join our movement for free thinking and free speech at libertynation.com. Publishing news and analysis 24/7 with original articles by our team of authors who tell it like it is. Join us each week for online TV shows, The Uprising Podcast, and Liberty Nation Radio. We believe in free thinking and free speech. We are libertynation.com.